Good morning. Welcome to the first meeting of the Regional Planning Committee in 2026. Before I move forward, I would like to ask our interpreter how to access interpretation.
Morning, announcement from interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting scrolls are. Click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, 3 dots, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you're in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Buenos días, aviso por la intérprete. Para hacer el uso de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom en donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de la reunión, favor de pedir los auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Gracias. Thank you.
First, I would like to ask our clerk, Ms. Francesca Webb, to confirm that we have quorum.
Thank you, Chair. We do have a quorum with the County of San Diego and North County Inland absent. Oh, I'm sorry.
County just walked
The
in.
county is present, so just North County Inland.
Yes, I'm saying everybody walked in.
Everyone snuck in when I wasn't looking. I'm sorry. We have a full house.
Thank you. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we call home. The tribal nations of the San Diego region have historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in our region, the most in any county in the United States, from 4 cultural groups: the Kumeyaay, the Diagenya, the Luciania, the Kupanya, and the Cahuilla. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the SANDAG community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from Indigenous traditional knowledge and experiences in undoing the injustice of the past. I will now call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. On to item number 1, non-agenda public and member comments.
Thank you, Chair. We have 4 members of the public who'd like to speak on this item. We'll start with Teresa Valenzuela and then go to Purita Javier.
Before you do that, let me just confirm that based on the factors of the number of items that we need to discuss and the complexity for today's meeting, each member of the public will be allowed 2 minutes for their comments.
Vice Chair and members of the committee, my name is Teresa Valenzuela, and I am the founder of Well Able Platforms. As a former state middle mile broadband initiative keynote speaker and working on the digital divide for the last 10 years with the P3 contract with County of San Diego and Periton, I'm now shifting my attention to the mobility last mile. I'm here to ensure that the 2026 work plan includes the infrastructure required to break the 5-mile invisible wall. Currently, our power wheelchair users are capped at a 5-mile radius because the battery is their boundary. When we break this wall, we activate a multi-billion-dollar buying power of our disabled, veteran, and senior population. While the next OS is a world-class digital brain for our regional flow, it currently has an accessibility blind spot. By the year 2030, 25% of San Diegans, including many of you, will be seniors. If the next OS cannot track, power, and guarantee access for this demographic, the system is obsolete even before it's finished. Are we ready for that? This isn't about a social service. It's about it's an economic decision. When citizens are homebound due to battery anxiety, San Diego loses the economic input of its fastest growing demographic. Your mobility master plan is a great foundation, but to truly be functional, it must include secure vandal-proof charging stations for wheelchairs and scooters. As a principal consultant for well-able platforms providing accessibility OS, the virtual AI handshake that provides that secure power, I am asking this committee to agendize a technical briefing for the accessibility OS in your 2026 work plan. Let's make San Diego the first city in the world to extend a virtual handshake to its mobility citizens and unlock that buying power.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Purita Javier, followed by Cesar
But
Javier.
before we move on to that, do we have contact information for that first speaker? I don't want it on the record. I'm just saying if we have that, so I can contact that person.
Yes,
after.
I can give it to you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to interrupt, Javier. Go ahead.
From here.
Good morning.
Good morning. I am Purita Javier, senior with existing medical condition and victim of ceramic kiln toxicity, poisoning in the air we breathe in a residential zone dedicated neighborhood. The home business next door was located, constructed, and operated since 1984. I was exposed beginning 1997, while my husband, Cesar, in 2012. We are hurt physically, emotionally, and even financially. We would formally report our community problem beginning June 2021. Since there are efforts to abate and or locate the hazardous business with all prayers has received up to this day enacted. Our 5th year voicing it at the city, county, APCD, and even SANDAG, it only to see help for solution on September 16, 2025, and we consistently seek for help. A divine intervention came about as essential. President L.A. Cava perceived my husband as violent man for his verbal.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Next will be Cesar Javier, followed by Andrea Ebbing.
And body language.
Cesar, the husband. We have been hopping from one council meetings in the region. City of Coronado, National City, Santi, the other day, if only to learn the patterns in governance. The Constitution is very clear. It says we have to work together and to ensure justice for all, for young and old like us, like this lady here, we are, I think, the most priority category as far as human element in development, rural or urban planning. We consistently say this because there is some kind of misgivings to us humans in our community setting designated as residential zone. We thank you, Ma'am Aguirre. Our expectation is flowering. You're fighting for justice of the victims of Tijuana River pollution. I heard her, and I believe if she would speak in the council meeting at the city, the council president would be threatened because our fellow Sandiegans there, District 8, are dying, sick and dying. And what have the city done? Councilor Lee, thank you, you're present. These are all land issue, land use issue, the variance issue. And we are thankful that he is present. And we are thankful that Councilor Rivera is not here.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Andrea Ebbing, followed by Blair Beekman, and Blair will be our final speaker.
Good morning, this is Andrea Ebbing, and Blair Beekman. Just want to talk about tech accountability as well. Thank you for always championing this. I want to talk about how our roads are used and our systems are used improperly for abusive process for the RICO enterprise that is absolutely operating within San Diego at this moment in time. The ARGIS system stats that we saw during a recent meeting that showed 2024 and 2025 having, almost identical numbers. And somebody up there had mentioned, oh, look at the numbers. Look, there's not much of a difference between 24 and 25. Well, that's statistically impossible. So those are made up numbers. That's a lie. We keep on getting lied to. And when the ARGIS system, if it's supposed to be an effective system, if it's a nationwide system, then my daughters who are driven across the country on a permanently suspended license by a felony strangler who also had a felony strangulation case murder investigation in Massachusetts. So not just my strangulation, but another strangulation in the state in which he abducted my daughters to. Anybody could have pulled that up very easily. Anybody could have pulled up my restraining order. Anybody could have pulled up the fact that my children who were protected parties from him, who he would not turn over, turned into a child abduction at that point. But when we have a RICO mob boss for a DA using our roadways and our systems to protect her agenda, like the Nancy Sussman case, where she arranged for a high-speed chase of a USC attorney whose son was murdered, and she used my ex's partner. She says all the same things. Nancy Sussman is mentally ill. She wants to prosecute Nancy Sussman. So she uses my ex's partner, Prakash Bhatia, a dope dealer, DEA conviction, to commit Nancy Sussman. So she used a dope dealer to commit her enemy, and then he was busted by the DEA, and his only punishment was to pay $145,000 to her husband, federal judge Dana Sabrow. That's a problem.
Thank you. Our final speaker will be Blair Beekman. You can go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Blair Beekman. Thanks for the nice words of Andrea Ebbing previously. Tech accountability is important to myself. There was a really important item to myself on mobility issues from the first speaker. Really interesting public comment. It's my goal that tech accountability policies, good policies, can work really well with the future of mobility issues and bringing together, different, areas working for one good community sustainability purpose. And that idea of community harmony. Good luck in those efforts, bringing the all boats can rise together approach with our issues. I wanted to comment overall that I'm in Oakland still. I'm in the SFA area. I'm heading back to San Diego this weekend, and I'll be in San Diego for a short amount of time next week. I spoke at Oakland City Council yesterday for the last time. They've worked excuse me, they've worked really hard trying to create a new flock, new ALPR vendors for their previous flock program. So, it's been a really tough fight to do that, but change can be made. It is possible. I hope San Diego County, cities and county area will be looking into a more principled ALPR vendor for their future. That can allow local communities more control over national security questions. That's an awesome combination. From all of that, boy, we are trying so hard to just put up with this Trump administration. I think we're all hoping it can end in 4 years. In that time, I hope we work towards good mediation, ask questions, real questions of what is immigration, and offer policies of demilitarization and de-escalation and however they have to work at this time. And good luck that we work towards
Thank you. Your time has expired. That concludes the public comments.
Are there any member comments?
I just have a quick one. I want to thank the speaker who came out and talked about the mobility issue
Yes.
and the opportunities around a digital handshake. I think that was very interesting, and I would encourage us to explore that and maybe have a
I've asked for
conversation.
the contact information. but
Yeah, I
Peter,
figured you
I
were,
do
but I just
believe
want-
we need to look into that.
I think that would be fabulous. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. At this time, Antoinette, are there any SANDAG updates you'd like to share?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Antoinette Meyer. I'm the Senior Director for Regional Planning here at SANDAG. I'm covering for Mario today, who is out of town, and I have a handful of updates. But first, I want to welcome and congratulate Jose Marquez, who is the new Deputy District Director for Planning at Caltrans District 11. Jose was selected for that role, and we're really pleased. And that's the position that Ann Fox had before she was promoted to District Director at District 11. So welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah.
I think he wants to say something. Did you-
Jose, did you
I
want
just
to?
was gonna say thank you.
So I know we haven't had a meeting in a while. This is old news for some of you, but some of you may not know that on December 12th, the board adopted the 2025 regional plan and the environmental impact report. It was then submitted to the state and federal government, and in record time, we got approval from the federal government for our regional transportation plan earlier this week. And
Wow.
I don't think we've ever gotten it within
No.
a few weeks. So that's great news. Now we'll wait for the state. They usually take a bit longer, and we'll keep you posted on that. The board also approved at its last meeting the remainder of the Smart Growth Incentive Program grants. We awarded $55 million total. That is the largest amount awarded in the 17 years that that program has been in existence. So that's fantastic. That will fund 36 different projects throughout 14 cities in the county of San Diego. And we expect to have all of those grant agreements executed by late February, early March at the latest. We also got a notice from the federal government that the region's first climate action roadmap that this group heard a lot about over the last couple of years was approved by the US EPA. So that's great too, because that allows the city and the region to access different funding programs that require you to have that climate action plan. So it's exciting. It's a vision for how we can work together to reduce greenhouse gas emissions through 2045, and it really positions the region to compete for different funding programs. And then I wanted to make sure you all knew that we released a survey for the Cali Baja Border Resiliency Plan. This is the plan that is really kind of an environmental mitigation plan for the border. It covers not just our region, but Imperial County as well. So the entire US-Mexico border. It complements the border master plan that Jose led at Caltrans, which is transportation projects. And we put out a survey to stakeholders on both sides of the border to really understand the different climate hazards on communities in the border region. So please help us get the word out and take the survey if you are interested. And then last but not least, I wanted to make you all aware that as of Tuesday, February 3rd, SANDAG's reception will no longer, we will have reception on the 4th floor, but all guests will be required to check in on the ground floor. So we'll have reception in the lobby area of the boardroom right out here, and then staff will come down and escort you up to the SANDAG offices after you've done your check-in down here. So that is the update from SANDAG.
Thank you so much. Do we have any comments from community members on the update? Nope. Okay. Moving to the consent agenda. Francesca, do we have any public comments?
Thank you, Chair. We do. We'll start with Cesar Javier and then go to Blair Beekman.
Cesar and Purita, thank you, SANDAG. We spoke on this consent subject because we are witnesses to the constitutional processes in the aspect of mobility, circulation, and communication. We are learning, and there is no bar commenting or barring in the approval of these minutes. One subject that attracts us most is the climate action planning on how to combat pollution. And this revives our faith and hope that we are in good hands. SANDAG to us is a priority agency working on circulation mobility element in urban rural planning, and we are very thankful on it. You know, the premium there, it includes other elements like sheltering. That's in the urban planning elements. Sheltering, society. What else do you remember? Our shell, which is environment in general context. And which the other one? Society, which is a very strong element to focus in any kind of governance, particularly in planning. It's all about man. If I may not commit a mistake here, it's all about man. The Komeyai history. And we are now the generations of the Komeyai. Let's learn from the historical lesson, the dark days, please. And we pray divine intervention to help us all.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our final speaker will be Blair Beekman. You can go ahead.
All right, thank you, Blair Beekman. I was not at the previous planning committee meeting and its minutes. It sounded really interesting, like this committee itself does. It sounds like it can do a good thing in planning. Thank you, regional planning issues. About Transnet Smart Growth Incentive Program, Cycle 6 funding recommendations. I'm very concerned about the future of the automatic vehicle coming to San Diego, Waymo, using it as taxi services, among other things. I think it has really dark intentions to really build out and build up the future of our surveillance tech future and our data collection future. We're going to have a lot more what's that called? Ambient technology, environmental technology that's data collecting so that those automatic vehicles can run smoothly through cities. That leaves a lot of questions open. And I hope that this SANDAG committee, and especially this planning committee, will want to take the time with technology issues to really do an in-depth study of what all that additional environmental tech placed in our local communities will mean, what it will be about. To go into the depth of the future of automatic vehicles and not say, oh, we need them, bring them here quickly. We have to have a deeper conversation, and good luck how to do that. There was another item, housing legislative issues. It was mentioned working with Mexico on issues. I think the importance of mixed income is massively important for our future, and different ways to really develop people of different income levels living in the same neighborhood. I know it's a lot to ask for. I think working with Tijuana can really develop, who needs help in this also, can develop some really interesting models for our future. And I know it's hard to hear, but good luck in considering those examples of future mixed income ideas for neighborhoods, and always want to be practicing it. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the public comments.
Did any of the members have any comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, may I have a motion to recommend the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Aguirre. I second it. Please vote.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Moving on to the reports. Robin Wapner and Stacy Cooper will present an overview of key discussion items anticipated for consideration by the Regional Planning Committee in 2026 and seeking feedback. So one of the things that before the meeting we talked about, in part of the reorganization, the SANDAG board would like more actual involvement from the committee members so that they can actually incorporate more of what we all think before it hits the board. So please today, but all the future of these meetings, if you have comments, obviously make them now, but feel free at any time to send comments so that we can make them as part of our record. So with that,
thank you. You took the opening segment away from us. Yeah, but it's your first meeting of the year. We always like to take a few minutes to think about what's coming ahead. What are we going to be focused on for the coming year? But like the chair mentioned, late last year, actually for the second part of the year, the board and the executive committee embarked on what we were calling a governance refresh project. The executive committee recognized it was time to take a look at our policy committees and the board and make sure that it's working. We've got a governance structure that is codified in state law, and state law essentially sets the framework, right? It says you're going to have a board, this is your membership, and you have certain policy committees, but it leaves the discretion of what the policy committees are really going to be focused on, the purview and responsibilities to the board to determine. And so that's the conversation that we had last year. We brought on an independent consultant who completed an assessment, did focus groups, sent out a survey. We heard from some of you, and we talked to staff, and what we heard is we want more. We're having a lot of conversations, but it's not clear what's the outcome. How is this really informing the policy decisions that we're asking the board to make? And so with that, we looked at Board Policy 1 and proposed, and the board ultimately approved amendments to the responsibilities of each of the policy committees to help focus and refine the work that you all are doing. And so today we wanted to make sure that we sort of highlighted what that means for the Regional Planning Committee in particular. Also, you have probably noticed, I'm sure the meeting schedule for this committee has changed. So as we looked at what are each of the committees doing, we looked at how should they be doing them. And it's not about the number of meetings you have or how often we're meeting, but are we really making the best use of our time? And so with that, for a couple of our committees, including this one, we did change the cadence of the meeting schedule to allow for more robust discussions. Staff is putting a lot of time and thought into what are the items that we're bringing forward and how do we package them to really facilitate that discussion that you were mentioning and get the feedback that we need to actually inform the work that staff is doing. So we don't want to be coming to you and saying, this is what we've completed, here it is. We really want to be bringing you along the journey with us. And I think you're going to see that reflected in your agenda today in particular when it comes to housing and SB 375 legislation. The membership has not changed for RPC. Many of your responsibilities are staying the same, but you did get some new ones. And so Stacey's going to walk us through those.
All right. So as Robin mentioned, yes, you did get some new responsibilities. So those include commenting or providing recommendations to the board on third-party environmental documents, making recommendations to the board on regional land use, housing, and resilience issues, and what's going to be everyone's favorite, reviewing and making recommendations to the board regarding RENA. So we have some topics outlined for potential discussion this year, and I'm going to pass it back to the chair to open it up for your feedback.
At this point, these are the potential topics for this year. So you understand, these are the ones that staff has come up with. I've talked through it with some of them, but this is an opportunity. If there's anything in this list, first of all, you would like more clarification from staff of what they actually want our opinion on, they can provide that now, but they're really looking to us. So what is it we want to provide opinions on, both in these topics or any other topic that you think would be relevant before it hits the board? And I'll tell you, we just went through this kind of restructuring in my own city. We got a lot of pushback from some of the committees that didn't understand why we were doing it. They thought we were taking away some authority people had, but we had to remind them the authority comes from the board, and the board gives you what actions the board needs to take, and they're seeking input. So the same thing here. They're not trying to tell us we can't do things. They want to know how we want to do these, or the more things we think they should seek our input on. So here's your opportunity. If there's, I think this covers a lot of them. Obviously, housing legislation's moved to the top because that's probably the single biggest reason everybody's feeling like we have to do something in this committee. Then RENA following right behind it, obviously, is the biggest. Then people ask why shoreline preservation. Well, that's one of the subcommittees, and we're supposed to actually oversee what they do. And there's been a lot in this last year discussion about, for those of you that have been here for a while, we've had 2 different sets of sand replenishment done through coordination with SANDAG, and we're one of the few regions that does that very, very well. We've been successful in getting funding as well. So they would like our committee to help in overseeing how those programs are being administered or recommended from the lower committees. Then grant programs. We had the most successful grant program. We were just talking about our last cycle, gave more money than we have before, but obviously there's criteria for the grants in many different forms that SANDAG administers. So we're going to look at some of those through the year if there's suggestions we have, or maybe better ways to refine or better ways to communicate with cities to get them. So they want our input on all of those. So some of these, I would encourage everybody to go back to your own staffs, because our cities are the ones that are going to be participating in many of these, and our staffs have comments. They've worked through these. They can tell us what worked and what didn't, and we can bring that back. And I request you bring that back so SANDAG can make all of them better. And then the last one, the environmental mitigation program. That's one of my favorites. I chaired that committee when it first started after Transnet 2. And we do a lot of mitigation for our projects, but also other funding in other areas. And so that's also under the purview of RPC. So if there's anything in those programs that you've in particular familiar with, those of you that have land management authorities within some of the areas set aside for mitigation, again, talk to your staffs if there's anything that we can do to be better or more helpful. This is the time to do it. This is how we get it into the system before, let's face it, it's OBE. It gets to the board. It's either up or down. We don't get to fix it at those levels. So the more we can start now before it gets out of our committee, the better the process will be. Because nobody wants it to show up at the board meeting and we have to have a lengthy disagreement over something. That's not what we want. We want to make it right as soon as we can. So with that, anybody else have any other ideas of more things that you might want? Yes. Supervisor Geary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that the suggested topics are great. Obviously, I think RENA rises to the top.
Yeah.
That's a very important and challenging program because, you know, we need to make sure that there's enough affordable housing allocated, that there's the distribution is equitable, and that we are allocating enough housing for a region. And I think this committee, opposed to the transportation committee, for example, I think it's the committee that makes sense, right? Same thing with the housing and legislation attached to that, because I think it's important that we track that on all fronts. We have seen state legislation greatly impact positively or negatively our cities, right, and county. And then I want to mention on environmental mitigation program, we are looking at some new strategies at the county on what that would look like, opposed to what's been done traditionally. You know, the mitigation banks and habitat restoration. We're looking at other things, including solar capture to offset vehicle miles traveled, for example. So I would be very interested in continuing that conversation on this committee as we maybe think outside of the box and creatively. So for me, those would be the three. Shoreline, I'm not opposed to this committee overseeing shoreline preservation, but I want to just uplift the work that the Shoreline Preservation Group has done. They're very dedicated, even though they only meet on a quarterly basis. They always have up to the latest science data and information. So any recommendations coming out of the working group, I think, sure, we can rubber stamp on this committee, maybe have a discussion if needed, but I think that working group is already doing some really important work. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I will tell you, I'm not familiar with the county's work looking at alternatives for environmental mitigation. So I certainly would benefit from learning from those. So I'm assuming somebody from your staff already works with SANDAG staff to make sure that we're getting that information, because that's news to me. I'm not familiar, and I'd very much like to be more familiar.
It's very much in the early stages and early conversations, but I think that there are a lot of opportunities that we could discuss. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members, or did you want to comment on that?
If I can just add a footnote, because we've both talked about the work of the working group and how we're working with staff. As part of this refresh project, we're also the next phase looking at those working groups. Next week, we'll be having a conversation with the executive committee about those, and maybe is it time for those to evolve into more technical task forces that would help us actually work hand in hand with your jurisdictional staff on a more frequent basis. So instead of having standing groups, maybe we're identifying specific topics that we need to be focused on, working with your city managers to identify who from your cities or county we should be working with, and bringing us together on a more ad hoc basis to focus on that work. So for this committee's purview, that would probably impact the shoreline preservation working group, maybe making that a technical task force, as well as the sustainable communities working group as well. So we've met with the city managers, we heard their feedback, and that's really sort of the direction they were pushing us. But we'll have that conversation with the exec committee next week to see where we'd like to go. And we would welcome your thoughts as well, of course.
Thank you. Did any, Mr. Morrison?
Yes, I think in particular on the arena, I know in the past we've done like ad hoc committee. And so it'd be a limited number of individuals with limited perspectives that would put into this. And then the first time the board members would see it was when it was already in a document and it came to the board. And if anyone brought up suggestions, well, it was too late to change it. And I don't know if we got too many hands raised here saying that RENA is not a broken situation. So I think the more opportunities we have, the more input and the more perspectives we have going into RENA, I think the better off we're going to be.
If I can just add, in addition to making RENA part of this group's responsibility, we're also going to be forming or proposing to the executive committee that we form a staff level task force to support the next cycle of RENA. So.
Yes. Bruce.
Yeah, I would want to echo what Mayor Morrison said. When I saw this, I thought that good topics, agree with all of them. I'd like to see it go RENA, 2026 housing legislation, RENA, shoreline protection, RENA, grant programs, RENA. Okay. That was my only thought. Thank you.
I have to tell you, when I talked with staff yesterday, I said the same thing. I said, really, RENA is it? I mean, do we get that under control? The rest of them kind of are all falling from it. So I'm with you on that one. But I was reminded that we're not yet in that RENA cycle, but we are in the 2026 housing legislation. So they said, at least for right now, let's try and get into that one. But everybody fully recognizes RENA is the big apple, as they say.
Just a reminder on the timeline for everyone, we'll start our consultation with HCD in early 2028, but the chair and I were talking, there's no reason that we can't start conversations before then.
Did any other board members have any further comments on that? Nope. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have any public comment requests?
Thank you, sir. We do. We have two, Cesar Javier and then Blair Beekman.
We brave ourselves because we sworn our allegiance to our Constitution. Not to a person, not to Councilor Lee, not to Mayor Gloria, not to Democrat or democracy or what. We swore to our Constitution to protect and defend it. And my contribution in this context is that SANDAG seems to be not only focusing on mobility and circulation. Well done. Good planning. Because while it is focusing on it, in the Venn diagram, it also touches the elements of our environment, the human, which our city of San Diego is failing. There is no health and human services. It also touches shelter, which is an element of urban planning, and the core, which is society. In our learning at the Senator Weber meeting, one citizen said, you know, Ma'am Senator, the U.S. culture, American culture is destroying our health and safety. Ma'am Aguirre, public health has declared the Tijuana issue a crisis. We know that. But SANDAG is trying its best to assist, to help, because this is a requirement of our Constitution. What about the concerned cities? District 8 of City of San Diego, what have you done? Chair Nora Vargas gave up and declared crisis. What did the
Thank
city?
you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Blair Beekman. You can go ahead.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Thanks a lot for this item. I had a few questions and how you're going to be planning for this item. Housing legislation, I can talk more about the wonders of mixed income on the next item, I think. Good luck on those efforts. Environmental mitigation program. I'm all for the work you can do with this and how it can relate to shoreline preservation, for instance, among other subjects. But a thought occurred to me that I hope you can do it in a way that's developing a language that there's a lot of people who are really fearful of what environmental mitigation means. And for you guys to, it takes a lot of patience, but to practice a language that can be accessible and understandable to people of the community who think climate change is a hoax, who think sea level rise, they go into a great rhetoric about sea level rise. How can we cut through that rhetoric and develop a way that can be very clear and specific that there's really important goals to be working on? And I hope that can be developed as a good language with people. And with the UN issues, how do we deal when people think this is all just a UN thing? How do we navigate what may not be the greatest from the UN and make it our own community good process and practices? So we have to be listening and mindful. Good luck on those efforts. About RENA issues, I did not hear anything in this. You guys have been working hard the past few years on updating RENA things and making it more accessible and more flexible and easier to work with, and it can make changes quicker. What's going on with that study group? Was that a part of this conversation that just happened? I did not hear that. And it's really, really important. And I hope that is a part of, and I just missed it, what you're going to be planning for RENA things in the upcoming year. And please give updates how that process is going. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the public commenters.
Did any members have any comments after the public comment? If not, thank you for that discussion. I look forward to many more discussions about that. Let's move on to item number 5, the 2026 Housing Legislative Overview, presented by Ryan Williams, Stacy Cooper, and Clerk Backburn. It is a discussion item and staff is asking for our feedback. If we have any questions during the presentation, feel free to ask, but please save your comments for after the presentation and we've gotten public comments. With that, I'm not sure who's leading.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I will quickly reintroduce myself and Kirk himself. Stacy, I don't think needs a reintroduction. I am Ryan Williams. I'm with the government relations team here at SANDAG.
Thanks for having me. Kirk Blackburn. I'm an attorney and lobbyist with Ellison Wilson Advocacy. Our firm has served as SANDAG's legislative advocates at the Capitol up in Sacramento since the 80s. Personally, this will be my 20th year as a lobbyist at the Capitol, and I do come from the region, grew up in Carlsbad, went to UCSD, so I'm familiar with the region. So thank you for having me.
Okay, so today we're here to discuss 2026 housing legislation, provide you all some updates and get your input on strategic priorities for the year ahead. The discussion builds on the comprehensive letter our board of directors submitted to the California State Legislature last July, which is provided for reference in your packets. The letter outlined principles for how the San Diego region should be represented in state housing policy discussions. It addressed concerns about the RENA process and requested specific principles be reflected in future legislation and administrative actions. The key message in that letter and the message we have carried forward since is that we share the same goal with the state, more housing for our communities, but our cities want dialogue on the best path to get there. The board's letter offered regional priorities for how to pursue that shared goal most effectively and requested that state legislators carry those priorities forward in Sacramento. So since submitting that letter, we've been very active in Sacramento. Chair Huebner, board members, and executive leadership have met with lawmakers throughout the year, making numerous trips to Sacramento, meeting with legislators both in the Capitol and in district offices, as well as engaging key administration leadership, including the governor's office, cabinet officials, and HCD senior staff. Throughout all these meetings, the goal has been to help bring local perspective to state lawmakers and officials. We've underscored our shared commitment to housing while highlighting some of the implementation challenges jurisdictions face on the ground. As we've continued to engage around these priorities, we've also been collaborating with many of your city managers, as Robin referenced, throughout regular meetings, and that has helped align our engagement on a range of topics, including SB 79 implementation, which we'll discuss more in the presentation. So today, we want to discuss our 2026 strategy and priorities. We're looking forward to hearing the committee's feedback and input on where we should focus our advocacy efforts. I do want to mention that we'll be bringing our full 2026 legislative program forward to the executive committee next week. Part of today's discussion is helping us develop how we carry forward the principles reflected in goal number 10 that you see on the screen to that program. I should note the legislative program is not ordered by priority. So the number 10 is not reflective of relative importance. It is just an indexing tool to let us know goal number 10 is about housing. This year's program includes also a bit of a change, as you see in the blue text there. It's a consolidated goal. It's two previously separate but interrelated housing goals that were in the 2025 program that we've combined primarily just for streamlining purposes. This isn't a substantive change to our approach or the language. It's just a more efficient way to present that housing priority goal more broadly.
Question on that when finish what you're going to say, but before you go to the next slide,
I was going to turn it over to Stacy, so it's a perfect time for a question.
Okay. And by the way, this is when I mentioned I wanted RENA to be first. I was not happy it was number 10. As a matter of fact, before it gets presented to the board, I'll say it again in public, move it to number 1, please. I think that's probably going to be unanimous that this committee would recommend that become number 1. But into the substantive details of it, I understand there's been a lot of wordsmithing and trying to add phrases, move phrases in this. So I tried to step back from doing that, as lawyers are wont to do. So I was just trying to go to the blue line, because if somebody's going to read this whole thing, what's the takeaway somebody's going to get from it? So if I want to make sure I'm understanding that this blue line, support for legislative and administrative reform of RENA, process and state housing element law. So in your opinion, that would summarize basically all the fancy phrases and words in this paragraph.
I think it's additives to some of the principles earlier. I think it's the broad purpose of the legislative program is to give us sort of the cover to go to Sacramento and sort of advocate on a range of topics. I think that that is an explicit call out of RENA reform that was added by the board in the 2025, 2024 perhaps cycle. But it is not summarization of the earlier sentences.
Okay, just want to clarify that because I will put my lawyer hat back on and it didn't mean the same thing to me. So I didn't lead with my answer. I wanted to make sure we were all on the same page. So, okay. Second question, the phrases incentives to jurisdictions that provide opportunities for more housing. So let's look at that phrase. And I realize we're not going to be able to wordsmith this. This has already gone through staff, but I just want everybody to be thinking about it. I like that concept, but I thought, educate me. I thought there's a lot of things we used to do that we like to do, but that we've pretty much been told that you know, hell freezes over before we're going to get some of these. So how realistic is it to be pushing for these kind of things? Because doesn't this say we get to get around what they're trying to force us to do, which is not do incentives for other things?
You want to take that one?
I think a current example of what we would consider to be an incentive may be like REAP funding. So this was new formula funds that didn't exist a couple years ago that we have been able to work with the legislature to push down to the regions so that we can push it out to the jurisdictions so that you can actually build housing.
Okay, so it's money, not changing allocation. Just wanted to clarify, make sure everybody's clear about that.
Yes.
Okay. That was my big question for this. Did anybody else have any questions or input? Yes, please.
Yeah, I one question of clarification. If you could explain the concept of addressing shortage of affordable houses, homes for people of all income levels. I understand affordable housing for lower income, but I don't understand affordable housing for above moderate, I guess. What is meant by that? It seems like an oxymoron.
I think we can all be honest in saying we were not around when that language was played in the legislative program. And so I don't know that we could try to explain it or where it came from. But we are open to feedback.
Well, I would hope that our lobbyist has an opinion because you have to represent that up there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, otherwise, I would recommend we change it.
Mm-hmm. I think we would, Kirk, unless you have a thought on this, staff have any concerns?
Yeah, I'll tell you, as somebody that wasn't around when this was drafted either, what I'm reading between the lines is this is a way of saying we recognize that it's not just trying to build housing for very, very, very low income. It's addressing the fact that we do need to do housing for low income, moderate income. So it's not saying we're going to build above, for people. Above market. It's just trying to say it's all of those income levels. But I agree. When you read it, it makes it sound.
But if we look at our achievement, or I should say lack of achievement in RENA lower income, what we are building is way more than the above moderate requirements, way more, and not enough of the lower. And it seems like this is a misguided statement, trying to reform a not performing system, and I think we're trying to reform it in the wrong way. So I'm trying to get us back on track to provide lower income housing for people that need it to be affordable.
You know what? I agree. So the question is, our feedback then, let me ask everybody else if anybody else has opinions about, yes, please, Supervisor Geary.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification, Mayor Ellers, because you are absolutely right. I think that in the last iteration of RENA, for example, at the city of Imperial Beach, we desperately need a lot of low income, very low income. Now what's known as workforce housing, right? We have to determine it to be that because the cost of living far exceeds our levels of income, right? So I think us pushing as a body for clarity in the language and not just lumping it all under affordable would be smart of us in communicating what we want, which is exactly what the mayor was saying. We don't have enough allocation around those levels of income, and that's really what's hindering people's ability to stay here and live a non-strained way of life, because I've said this a lot in my district. More than 30% of my constituents pay more than 50% of their income towards keeping a roof over their head. That nobody should have to do that, but that's the reality. So in short, I would say I'd be supportive of language that just makes it very clear what we're seeking, so that we don't get these allegations again.
Can I ask?
I think, oh, I'm
ahead.
sorry. I think that I agree with you. And I think if we were to take a poll, most jurisdictions have met or exceeded their moderate housing. And the tough one is getting the low and very low. And the penalties for those are severe. And it's challenging when you're upzoning in our city. Every single area is upzoned and we're still not achieving our low and very low. That's where we need the help. That's where we need grant money. That's where we need some realistic, achievable RENA numbers. And I think that the letter, and I want to congratulate the board, and I know many of you were on the board when you approved the letter to be sent, but I remember watching that meeting and it was a beautiful moment of complete unanimous support. And that doesn't always happen in here. And I would hope that that would be part of your roadmap, because this is what all of our representatives on the board together agreed. And I think because there's so much commonality among all the jurisdictions on the challenges and what they're really looking for with our new RENA allocation.
Just to get some clarification, do we think we'd be more comfortable if we literally struck the words all income levels and said develop publicly owned housing for people of very low and low income levels? I mean, do we think that would make us feel that was more accurate of the sentiments I'm hearing?
Real quick, can I chime in?
Please.
Let's not forget that in the next RENA cycle, there's 2 more income categories.
Oh.
So there's extremely low and acutely low income in addition to low and very low.
I support that. And I would say workforce, and because of the reasons I stated. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mayor.
To stick to the vernacular of HCD, it would be lower income. They use for very low and low, and I'm sure they will put in any other income.
Yeah.
But they're very consistent.
They've added the new
lower.
2 in legislation.
They do that too.
They've added those already.
But my point too, they still use the term lower to mean any that are affordable. For
As of now, yes, but we don't know in the future. So,
Well, would it be accurate to say less than moderate income? That would get all these classifications they're trying to throw at us. I'm just trying to figure out what words are helpful to our lobbyists and words are helpful to the board and the public to understand what we've all said and we all understand to be true. That's where we need help.
So I'll chime in from a city of San Diego perspective, especially because I understand everyone probably has a different challenge when it comes to RENA. For us at the city, as I understand it, we calculate RENA, our measurement of the different categories of RENA different from some others. And so, for example, at the city, we actually meet nearly nothing in the moderate category because every unit of housing that is new, that is developed, that is not deed restricted as low and very low, or not specifically deed restricted as moderate, we count as the highest, market rate. That is the assumption that every unit that comes to market is likely at that higher category. And so our greater challenge has been that unless something is very specifically deed restricted at moderate, we simply don't count it. That's not the case for every jurisdiction here. So I'm a little hesitant to just classify that our RENA objectives are focused on low and very low and any new categories that are created because our bigger struggle at the city of San Diego is actually in that moderate category. Part of it is how do we actually calculate it because we don't have data for what units are going for after they're completed. And so that doesn't allow us to accurately classify that. And therefore, we're actually still looking for ways to actually ramp up moderate and what we often call workforce housing. Because as a reminder, that is for most people in San Diego still something you can't afford.
I appreciate that greatly because Coronado has the same issue most of the jurisdictions do. Nothing pencils in our city because every developer will build to the maximum amount. I mean, most of us say we couldn't afford to move now. I mean, it's insane what our rates are. So we can't get anything except severely above housing. So for us, anything would be helpful. But I do understand the penalties for the fact that we're not going to make the very low and whatever new as it is. The city just, I'm so proud of us. We spend our own money, $5 million to buy a parcel of land that will maybe get us 6 units that we are building to be low income, because that's the only way, the city to take its own money, because nobody else is building it. So I love the idea of putting low income, but now I'm concerned if maybe that's why the language is the way it is. Maybe San Diego was the one that said, so I'm not sure. Help me figure out, folks, what do you think is the recommendation we want to give?
We can do both. I mean, I'm not advocating to strike the moderate income level, at least from my perspective. I think it should be all of the above, everything we said, and this as well, because it's true. And we want to push also, folks to urban core centers for housing, right? That at the county, the challenge has been the expansion to the wildland urban interface, the potential for exposure to wildfires, right? And reducing vehicle miles traveled, which is one of our mandates as a body. So I'd be supportive of adding that too.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the comment that Supervisor Gary just made about pushing more to the core, urban core, I think that's where the crux of the problem is. We are getting a one size fits all, and what you think of as an urban core, or Kent thinks of an urban core, is not what I have downtown Encinitas, because I don't have a downtown urban core, really. Right. And so that is the crux of the problem. So if we could craft something that really tries to apply to making it more affordable for the majority. And I understand with you are probably not building enough moderate also. We break even on moderate. We're right there within a handful of units. But above moderate, we are multiple factors, 2 to 4 times. I forget the number. It's so ridiculously high. We're overbuilding it. And what that does is that just generates more luxury housing. You'll hear me say all the time, how many more $1 million condos do I have to build to solve affordability? The answer is none. We should be getting the law so that it takes whatever money we have, whatever extra value we're generating off these upzones, and it should be putting it not towards profits and making speculators rich, but we should be getting it to produce the subsidy for the lower income and or moderate housing as necessary. I would argue also that our biggest, what's the real problem with building affordable housing? It's the fact we don't have the subsidy, the $700,000 per unit.
Yep.
$700,000 is for the lower income. The moderate has a smaller number. So, this all comes back to money, really. And it's really where the money comes from, and the redevelopment disappearing, whatever you want to blame it on. It's the state mandating these requirements on us, but not providing the funding. So we have an unfunded state mandate here.
Thank you. I want to add a comment that complements what you just said. I was going to say it anyway, because it's germane to this conversation, but at the county, we're on track to meeting our RENA numbers in the unincorporated areas. But for example, my district has the lowest geographical area of unincorporated area. And most of my constituents live in, within other jurisdictions, right? National City, Chula Vista, San Diego, and Imperial Beach. So something I wanted to, and I've expressed this before at the county, is having the county be a partner to our regional jurisdictions where it makes sense by supporting the Innovative Housing Trust Fund. We've supported projects in the past. We just opened Kettner here in San Diego. We opened an affordable housing project in San Isidro, where the county came in with some of the funding to close that gap. That speaks to what you were saying, Chair, about things not penciling out. Yeah. Usually, as long as it has an element of, within our scope of health and human services, right? Providing something within, yeah, exactly. So that for me is going to be a very strong priority as we move through our budget process this fiscal year and next year. So I wanted to put that out there as a
I
city.
appreciate that. That is very helpful.
Thank you.
Did you want to say something else?
Yeah,
Councilman? Yes.
I'll add one last thing to Bruce's comment here, which I think is relevant. The one size fits all thing, I think, is always what the challenge of RENA is. Because again, when we look at the city, we get the benefit of being large enough that we have the same challenges each of you face. It's just that when folks want to talk about building in coastal areas, we simply don't have to because we can choose to put it somewhere else in the city. And people sort of forget that that's how we end up addressing housing, is we are trying to focus it into urban corridors. And so then our opposite challenge also is that because of the large geographical region, there is a simple habit that we put affordable housing in fairly lower income communities, which runs counter to this idea of having more depth of housing within higher resourced areas within the region. So that I think is the balance that we're always struggling to meet, which is we know where it's not cost effective to build. We also know we don't want to just put everything where it is cost effective to build. Perhaps to solve this issue, maybe something that says for people of all low and moderate income levels would probably solve the issue. I think what we're trying to all avoid is the focus potentially on above moderate, correct?
And that was the language I was trying to get to. We could find words that work. So if we were to say to provide publicly owned housing for people of low and moderate income levels, would that make everybody, we could add workforce too, but I'm not sure how to add it in there. So is that captured just low and moderate? Okay. I'll ask, we don't need a formal vote, but I'm just looking around to see that, is there anybody who does not think that would be a good edit recommendation? Okay, then there you go. Sorry, we're only in number. Okay, well, there you go. We got the discussion we wanted. So thank you very, very much. I think it's a better policy stating it in that manner. So thank you very much.
And just to say, this absolutely is the intent of talking with you all about it. And, you know, those edits can be reflected, and we'll look back at this conversation, make sure that all the topics raised are in some way reflected in that final document that we bring to the executive committee. So at this point, I was going to hand it over to Stacy for a continuation of the report.
All right, thanks. So next slide. Thanks. All right. I'll start. So as we know, SANDAG has several federal and state designations that form the framework for the work that we do as an agency. We play an important yet limited role in housing, as most local land use decisions are made by the cities and the county. This slide's just a reminder of what our responsibilities are when it comes to housing and what falls under our purview as an agency. So we develop a coordinated transportation and land use strategy with our regional plan and FCS. We distribute funding to local jurisdictions to incentivize smart growth through our SGIP program. We're responsible for developing the RENA methodology that fulfills the 5 statutory objectives. With state REAP funding, we developed and implemented a housing acceleration program. And most recently, when SB 79 was enacted, we were tasked by the legislature to develop a map of eligible TOD stops and zones by tier. So just a reminder, SB 79 is the Wiener bill that we talked about at our last RPC meeting that upzones around transit on sites zoned for residential, commercial, and mixed use. It increases housing density based on the distance from an eligible transit stop, the type of transit, and the frequency of the service. It goes into effect on July 1st for cities and at the start of the seventh RENA cycle for the unincorporated county. And I will pass it over to Kirk to talk more about the 2026 ledge cycle.
So I wanted to start off real quick with just an overview on the 2026 legislative session, including the legislative calendar for the year. So the legislature just commenced or recommenced from its interim recess at the beginning of January. We do have a new Senate Pro Tem, Monique Limon from Santa Barbara. Don't expect any significant policy redirections from her. Tomorrow is actually January 1st, the deadline for 2-year bills. Technically, they left Sacramento yesterday, so we're all done there. But the next big update, or the next big deadline that's forthcoming is February 20th, and that's a deadline for all bills to be introduced in 2026. Typically, we see around 2,500 bills introduced each year. We read, analyze, work with your staff to assess the impact on SANDAG for each one of these bills and the amendments to each of them as well. As is the case with most anything, the legislature procrastinates, and generally we see the bulk of these bills introduced the week prior to that deadline. So that's a heavy week, and we'll be digging through those. Subsequent to that, I'll just run through quickly these deadlines just so you guys have a sense. April 24th is the first House Policy Committee deadline. So that's when bills will need to be getting through their first policy committees. And then the first House, need to get out of the first House by May 29th. Then they flip houses, go to the second House. July 2nd is the deadline to get out of policy committees in the second House, followed by August 31st is when the legislature adjourns for the year. And then the governor has another 30 days to take action on any bills sent to him.
I think one of the reasons we wanted to flag each of these milestones is because each of these are an opportunity for us to try to inform legislation or change direction before it gets to the governor, of course. So it's going to be a long year.
As it always is. Next. So also within that context, did want to provide a sort of an overview on housing legislation in 2026. Overall, we anticipate it once again being a very active session on housing legislation. As I know you all are aware, over the past decade, state housing policy supported by the governor and legislative leadership has emphasized a pro-housing or abundance approach that emphasizes streamlining and deregulation in order to increase production, which they believe will lead to greater housing affordability. This approach prioritizes state-led mandates and by right development over local decision-making process. As we've seen with specific legislation, we saw with SB 79 last year. We've seen it with streamlined bills like SB 35, SB 423, and other efforts to strengthen the buyer's remedy and penalize local governments that have non-compliant housing elements. These have been passed despite ongoing opposition from local governments, who argue that not only do these usurp local control, but also that these laws are coming out so fast that we haven't had an opportunity really to properly get a sense for what's working, what's not working. And so, but we do expect the state direction to continue in 2026. So with that said, what is SANDAG's role as—
Hold on before you move to the bullet that says protect existing affordable housing. That is one of the things I did want to talk about. I don't know about the other cities, and I'm sorry that Kent left. Coronado is a severe risk in a matter of 3 years that the vast majority of our affordable housing will roll off their deed restriction, which I presume a lot of our cities, because most of them all went on around the same time because what the laws were back when that was passed. I'm not seeing any recognition of that is going to be, if HDC is mad at us because we're not making the numbers now, what is going to happen when we all roll back through no fault of our own in a couple of years? So is there any recognition on what to do about that in Sacramento? Are they acknowledging it? Because everybody's got to be in the same boat. I mean, they all, I'm sure a lot of them were put back on at that time. Any ideas?
No, but I will say our board chair has brought that up in every conversation that we've had in the state with legislators about the importance of preserving existing affordable housing. So she is really drawing attention to this topic. Yeah.
And Chair, we're going to spend a little time on this slide. Kirk's going to go into just sort of a high level of what's happening sort of within each of the principles laid out in the board's letter, and then sort of speak to what might be possible this year or what SANDAG might want to consider in terms of our strategic direction.
Before you do that.
We saw that problem coming years ago. I want to say 7, 8 years ago. We switched in Encinitas. Our inclusionary housing is now in perpetuity. And so what we typically do is have the density bonus will be the slight layer over that, barely. You know, you get 1 or 2. They'll be 55 years, but the base inclusionary is in perpetuity. We've been doing that now. I'm trying to think when they came through Planning Commission. 8 years ago or so, maybe longer. I forget.
And that didn't stop because the problem is, like I said, at this point, the only thing we can get built is when we own. So then it is in perpetuity. The city knows we wouldn't get we're still not getting anything built without having that restriction. We'll just guarantee nothing will be built unless we own it. I mean, that's.
I used to, my first time on the Planning Commission 20 years ago, I used to call the short, I think it was 35 years back.
I think
then.
it was, yeah.
Yeah, I called that the property developer retirement plan.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it was just deferred income. It was deferred income.
Yep. Thank you very much. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. So have our past strategies advocating to protect affordable housing included naturally occurring affordable housing such as mobile parks, even though those are under HUD's director is not HUD. Which one's the state? Which one? HCD. Yes, thank you. Those are under direct HCD, not under city. I see a tremendous opportunity there to protect those mobile parks from being bought up and then turned into luxury condos. We confronted one of those issues in Imperial Beach and worked very closely, thankfully, with Assemblymember Alvarez to pass a bill, but it was only specific to Imperial Beach. Are there opportunities to advocate statewide so that, because that counts too. So just wanted to flag that.
There is a bill in the legislature right now to protect mobile homes from SB 789.
Okay, so yes, so those are whatever's close to the transit hub. Would not fall under the exemption, but are there other bills that we could support or advocate to have draft? Maybe not this legislative period, but maybe next.
Okay, we're done. I'm sorry. You can go back to your pre-programmed slides.
Sure. No, this is good conversation. Appreciate it. It's helpful for me for sure. So what overall did within the context of housing legislative broadly, what is SANDAG's role as an MPO within and how as an MPO and how can it help? It's initially important that SANDAG it's to reemphasize as previously discussed that SANDAG shares the state's goal of producing more housing, particularly affordable housing, and just how we get there, maybe the difference in perspectives. At a minimum, SANDAG has and can continue to share its regional perspective on how it's working or not working to the legislature and administration. Additionally, SANDAG has and can continue to provide its perspective on the technical implementation of its MPO obligations, including development and redistribution of our arena numbers. But beyond that, we need to acknowledge a few practical and political facts. SANDAG does have finite political capital and does have many legislative and funding priorities in addition to housing in 2026. So we should be strategic about where we lead versus where we support partners. And so, for example, we have the League of California Cities as well as individual cities that will continue to lead on many of the housing advocacy efforts, being that they are entities oftentimes most directly impacted by these changes in law. We also have to acknowledge that there is an ongoing state budget deficit. We do have the governor currently, he just released his proposed budget, and he cited a nearly $3 billion deficit this year and is expected to grow in the next 2 years. Which means there will be limited state funding opportunities. So we need to be strategic there. But we also need to ensure that SANDAG's reputation as a good partner with the state is protected as we move forward as well. So with that in mind, we did want to review the specific concepts that were for state housing legislation that were included in SANDAG's RENA letter from last year. I'll go through the concepts, each of the concepts at a relatively high level and include any important facts or developments on each so that we can further discuss at the end. So we'll kick off with promotion of cities promote recognition of cities acting in good faith. This topic addresses obtaining relief from cities from the state punishments, including by right development, for not meeting the RENA numbers or otherwise having a non-compliant housing element. When non-compliance is more the result of market barriers versus intentional non-compliance. So specifically in the RENA letter, SANDAG had pitched the definition of good faith effort as defined in 2024 bill SB 1037, which imposed civil penalties for non-compliance at cities that acted in an arbitrary, capricious, or unlawful manner. While this approach did not gain traction at the legislature last year, it's our understanding that several legislators and perhaps Cal Cities is going to exploring somewhat similar legislation in 2026.
I have a comment on that one. Our city struggles, and it was only improved slightly by getting HCD to actually come out, because a lot of folks in Sacramento didn't understand that not only is it so expensive to build, but we are regulated by the feds, which actually own more than 50% of the land that counts in the city of Coronado. About a fifth is port and state owned. And then the airport authority, despite 10 years of me personally trying to prevent it happening, have put a landing zone limitation. So the state sees all this land that we can upzone. Nope. Airport authority says it cannot increase density and it cannot increase height. And nobody understood that in Sacramento. They saw this big island saying, oh, you can, no. Oh, we can build in that little portion. So when we talk about acting in good faith, I would like somehow to talk about the fact to realistically look, what is the area that you actually have control over? I don't know about other cities, but it was so much totally beyond our control. There's nothing we can do in any of those zones and no recognition of that at all.
Thank you. So within this context, yeah, SANDAG has and could continue to support these partner efforts as well as provide feedback on relevant legislation rather than sponsor its own competing bill in this context.
But I think that's a great suggestion. If there's other jurisdictions that think that could be effective, we could work with HCD to invite them down to the region for these field visits, if there's other examples like that.
I have a question. I would like that too. I mean, ours isn't as extreme, but 1/3 of our city is the fairgrounds, which we have no jurisdiction over. Yet we've got their job numbers, even if their job numbers were based on a 3-day event. So I would like that and appreciate that as well. The other thing I'm wondering is that many cities have, with the new fire mapping, have moved to a higher percentage of high risk or very high risk fire areas. And although you can build in that, and there's new building laws for that, I'm wondering if that's an impediment for developers because insurance is quite high and also questionable. I know in our city, we moved to almost 80% into a very high risk, which was dramatic, where Solana Beach lost some of their high risk and went down to moderate. And this was just based on new modeling on that the state did. So I'm just curious about that because I think that that could be an impediment that I'm concerned about.
Certainly keep an eye on that one.
I have a comment too about housing. So we're in a suburb out where we live, but we've approved a housing project for 3,000 homes across different attainable price points, including the active community, so 55 and up. Me, right? But what we found is there's CEQA abuse, that we're acting in good faith. We're trying to build more housing, and then where we are out in the suburban region, you know, it just gets caught up in the court with one judge over and over and over again. So we're struggling to meet our goals as well.
I think I have one more area similar to the high fire risk. I completely agree with that. If you go back and look at all the coastal cities in particular, coastal views have always been extremely important. And I'll go back to 1972 with Proposition D that was passed in the beach areas, passed in San Diego, city of San Diego. You know, that became the model for our general plan, quite frankly. I found it in our minutes of our general plan back in the 80s. And then we repeated that 30-foot, 2-story height limit that Measure D did. We repeated that in Prop A in 2013 in Encinitas. So I would add that that views would be another thing, ocean views in particular, that we want to avoid walling off Miami Beach style, the beach from anybody behind it. And so I really support the idea of bringing HCD down. When we did Prop A, we did bring HCD down. The deputy director came down. Robin Huntley at the time was the whatever, she had half the city. She came down and we had panel discussions. But I thought it was instrumental getting them here to see our issues, whether it is fire, whether it is views, you know, whether it is you know, whatever issues we're running into. I think we're unique, and the more we get HCD down here to see it and empathize with us, the better. So I'd appreciate.
Supervisor Geary.
Just quickly, I would just flag that, yes, HCD would be important, but then also Coastal Commission for all of you coastal cities because of the Coastal Act and the height and view corridor restrictions. And even more importantly, this is just going on a tangent, but I think since we're talking about housing, it's important. The Coastal Commission has been greatly criticized for trying to enact and protect the Coastal Act, especially around affordable housing in the coastal zone. But the reality is the Coastal Commission had its housing authority taken away from them in the 80s through the Mello Act. So now you have this unusual, sometimes conflicting of policies between HCD and Coastal Commission that could be remedied by reversing that authority back to the Coastal Commission as it relates specifically to coastal cities. So I just wanted to flag that.
Actually, I was going to bring that up, and that's why I let you go first, because I thought you might be talking about it. But that's one of the other issues we had to show HCD, that because of coastal jurisdiction, we also, so I'm telling you, we literally have a postage stamp of control in our community, because every agency in the world thinks they have more authority. So, but there is an absolute conflict between Coastal Commission goals and HCD goals. Everybody knows it, but nobody's doing a damn thing about it. So I'm not sure how to figure that out or who wins, you know, which is the bigger dog in that fight. So, and I realize that, but my point is, I'm not sure. And maybe as we talk about all of these, how that fits in, but it brings the bigger issue though. The other thing affecting all the coastal cities, the reason nobody wants to build any of these is everybody wants to build short-term rentals. And in Coronado, short-term isn't the 1-2 day thing. We luckily had a law in place before this craziness ensued. So it's 28 days is the, well, 26 technically days is the minimum, but every new thing is built now is either a second or a third home, or it is to rent out on a month basis. So if there's anything we could do to get some kind of state help in legislation in terms of what can be long-term. I mean, I would love some advantages to a home that is rented out like a year at a minimum or something. So I don't know if that's incentives the state can offer, or they can just stop preventing me from doing anything to encourage that. Because every time I bring it up, you know, it's a good thing I don't care if I run again. I've been here long enough. I keep coming back despite people wanting it. So I will say that out loud. That's the only way we're going to solve housing in the state of California, is if we stop letting people considering them their banks, their ATMs to pull cash out of, and think of them as housing to live in. So whatever laws has to happen, I think we need to be bold enough to say that.
Well, I think cities can do that. I know for our ADUs, we don't allow those to be short-term rentals. And we also have in our ordinance that they need to be living quarters instead of he sheds and she sheds and gyms. So,
but that doesn't help. I appreciate that. We in Coronado, because everybody wants to live there in 3 months out of the year, June, July, and August, that everybody rents them out for 1 month at a time, which means they are not year-long rentals. So they don't solve housing. That's our problem. Unless you make it a year, it doesn't have to be everybody. But there has got to be some way to stop all the short-term money grabbing so that we can have year-long rentals to solve housing. That is why we do not have housing. I'm sorry, I'm on my soapbox. Go back.
I want to get on my soapbox about something else. After Supervisor Gary brought up Coastal Commission, I think it's really important that we preserve the Coastal Commission, because the Coastal Act was overwhelmingly passed by the people of California. And there is that conflict, and I'm sure they feel pressure, but I think it's really important that I think most of us that represent cities, coastal cities, understand the importance of what Coastal Commission has preserved for generations to come, and the resources that once they're gone, they're gone. So, you know, I can see little chips of it, hints of it, and it really is, it can be potentially threatening to our coastal resources and coastal communities. And, you know, the beach isn't just people that live there, it's for everybody. There's,
at some point, you and I can have a discussion as the city largely responsible for why the Coastal Act was passed, because we have 12-story buildings on our beaches. I can talk to you at length.
Oh, I know. I grew up in Redondo Beach. So
problem is they are all being rented out wherever they are because of the beach. So I do want to preserve beach access, but this isn't solving housing. And that's what we've got to do, figure out how to solve housing. So yes, Mayor Morrison.
Well, I think, you know, the mention about having more of these organizations or the state or national level to visit into our communities, I think is important. And for the reason that each and every one of our communities is unique.
Yes.
And each one of us has different circumstances. And like I've heard a number of them here around this morning, and some of them oppose each other. I mean, they're exact opposites. You know, we're a coastal, national city, we're a coastal city. We don't have 1 inch of public access to coast. So there's no view corridors, there's nothing else. I mean, so, but we fall under the Coastal Commission. And in the same way, you know, we're considered, we got 9.3 square miles of land. You talk about your land. Well, 2.1 square miles of that is the bay. So unless they start counting houseboats, we don't get any credit for that, you know, a large amount of our acreage, and a large part of it is also naval base and the marine terminals. So
You're right.
So once again, if you just count by mileage, and in the same way, the other thing is in our housing distribution, you know, I know we're looking at what dealing with the state, but I think we also need, as being a self-certified county, we need to look on how we distribute and what our formula is for distribution of like the RENA numbers, things along that line. And is it really equitable? Because it's basically based, the last time I was involved with it, it was based on your amount of transit and your work and housing balance ratio. So for cities that have done a really good job in the past of doing their job and housing balance and put a lot of transit in theirs, they get the higher RENA numbers. The communities that don't want a lot of transit in their community and have their people driving all over the county to go into housing or go to work and everything else, they get rewarded with less housing. So, you know, it's like how equitable is our system. And as I say, it affects each and every one of us either positively or negatively different. But I think until we look at it in a total picture, and in the same way, even look city of San Diego, because it is such a large area and has a lot of different communities. And so it looks at what its total number is for low income housing. But if it's all of it's concentrated in Canto, Southeast San Diego, and you know, San Ysidro, have you really justified it, or are you just concentrating and having a greater separation of economic wealth within your community? And so, you know, there's a lot of things here that need to be looked at, but we look at them just purely the statistical of just saying, how much low income housing are we putting in, or how much of this or how much of that, you know, without looking at the totality of it and all the different aspects. We can very easily get out of not only out of proportion, but we can causing a lot of our cities to actually be an economic failure, because particularly with housing, if we're concentrating into a few cities, a huge amount of concentration of low income housing, most of which doesn't even pay property tax, we end up with a lot more services, but no income for that city to be able to provide those services. And so there's a, you know, this whole thing is probably one of the most complicated things we've got in government right now. And yet we're putting it in silos and not looking at it in you know, on the total impacts and how they work together.
Thank you very much. Back to you.
Sounds good. Thank you for the discussion. I'll continue on down the list. I'll do it really top level on some of them. Real quickly, just on this next one, encourage collaborative regional approaches. This is a concept discussed in the RENA letter, having to do with RENA swapping, sort of on the back end, allowing some flexibility there. We'll admit that any legislation that has been introduced in this field within the past couple of years has not had a lot of success. So just we'll highlight that, but it's generally sort of concerns about further densifying poverty in certain cities and that type of thing. The next two have to do with funding. So I did mention sort of the state's budget element, or the state's budget predicament. But with that, there are some, you know, there is some hope here. So within this, the first one, you guys did mention sort of the loss of redevelopment and the impact on affordable housing there. There has been discussion about potentially bringing redevelopment back. I know Assemblymember Alvarez from the region has specifically mentioned that. We haven't seen a bill yet introduced there, but we'll keep an eye on for that. There's also 2 active bills that would place a $10 billion housing bond on the budget or on the ballot in November, which would include $400 million for the infill infrastructure grant program. So we're working with with fellow COGS in that regard, and can continue to do so to make sure that COGS are eligible for that funding directly as well. Also in the funding space, REAP. So this has been a hugely successful program. Unfortunately, it's not currently scheduled to have any more funding going to it. But the good news is in the governor's proposed budget, he did include within some of the cap and trade, or now cap invest funds, that some additional money go to $240 million go through are provided for more flexible infrastructure investments aligned with regional priorities. So we saw that as a good precursor to some of the discussions this year. So we have and will continue to advocate alongside of COGS for some similar REAP-like funding in that regard through the budget process this year. As far as I know, we've touched upon increased transparency and communication from the state. That was highlighted within SANDAG's RENA letter last year. Specifically, also SANDAG did support AB 650 last year. Assemblymember Poppin, it was a Cal City sponsored bill, but it would have required HCD to provide specific analysis back and forth during that process. Unfortunately, that bill got vetoed by the governor, as HCD had cited that it was going to cost $11 million in new annual costs. But it is our understanding Cal Cities is going to be bringing a version of that back. Hopefully have learned some lessons. And so we can, and SANDAG can, and has and will and can continue to support those efforts and see if we can get that one across the finish line this year. Also in this space, SANDAG is seeking more clear guidance from HCD regarding SB 79. And then there was also a recent state auditor report that just came out that highlighted some ways that HCD can improve their communication. So we're hoping some of that finds its way into some legislation this year, and we'll be engaged on that. It was briefly mentioned, protect existing affordable housing.
If I could just really quickly jump in here and note, I think the conversation about inviting HCD to the region plugs in nicely to this item. So we'll take that back and sort of build it into the strategy.
Protecting affordable housing was mentioned, and specifically in the RENA letter, we did mention a naturally occurring affordable housing in NOAA. There was a bill last year, AB 670 by Quirk-Selva, that did make some improvements in this regard. Allows cities to report the number of units in existing multifamily buildings that were converted to affordable housing for up to 25% of a city's RENA for lower income units. Can certainly build upon that. We'll see if any further legislation in this regard is introduced this year, but any technical refinements, SANDAG can certainly be involved in that discussion. So with that, so the last bullet is sort of be strategic with SANDAG's role. So as a general principle, SANDAG as a regional entity has and can continue to share how these housing bills are being rolled out, and what works, what doesn't, and provide technical implementation assistance to the authors of housing legislation when and where appropriate. However, given some of the practical and political realities previously articulated, we must acknowledge that some of these additional housing advocacy concepts face significant headwinds going forward. So success will inevitably, as it often does with politics, require careful coalition building, strategic timing, in order to be most effective in this regard. So now that you have this context, as we move forward in 2026, we're seeking the committee's input on where to focus our advocacy capacity and political capital. Thank you.
I think you've heard a lot of our input.
Yep, it's going exactly as hoped. A lot of value being added. We did put together a couple of just sort of prompts of things to discuss with the committee. We can follow this as a potential starting point of subsequent conversation to our sort of meat of our presentation, or not. If you want to touch on entirely different topics, we're happy to engage. But the 2 questions were just which of the topics discussed, which legislative priorities should SANDAG really focus and sort of crystallize efforts around? What, in terms of order of prioritization, should we take from this committee as sort of the top items? And then separately, what does success look like to the committee? In terms of, when we look back on the 2026 legislative year, what would you like to have seen accomplished? Obviously, we set a lot of high level principles, but just sort of looking at that metrics of success question.
Can you put the previous slide back on? Okay. I'm trying to think in a way to be fruitful in these discussions. So if these are some of the priorities that you're looking to see which ones we put above others, would that be correct? Okay. Then I'll go to the committee. We've kind of talked a lot about a lot of these. So if anybody has any ideas as to what they want, what we want to recommend as a committee to the board to concentrate on, because I have to say, we do need to be strategic with our role. And since we have been the first out of the gate on a lot of things, our region, for what good or bad, seems to be setting state rules, because then we figure out how bad it works in our region and hopefully they fix it for others. But that's good in some ways, because then we can get a little bit of give, because everybody's realizing we didn't know what was going to happen. So anybody have any initial thoughts? If you could just number these, what would be your number one out of these? So just to give me that, to see if we have any consensus on what our number one is. So read them, take a minute to figure out.
For me, it would be the ones related to affordable housing, protect existing, advocate for long-term funding. As part of the protecting strategy, I think I mentioned earlier what we could look into, right? The mobile parks. And then I also mentioned the county standing ready as a regional partner. So collaborative regional approaches is important because it's been mentioned several times, one size does not fit all. So I think that's important.
Okay, but I asked you to choose one. So I agree with everything you just said.
Just
but could
one?
you
Oh,
give me
protecting
one?
existing affordable for
There you
housing
go.
for me.
It makes
Yes.
the most sense.
Yeah.
Okay, did you, Mayor?
I would second that, but I also, can we have something in there about RENA? Because we, obviously RENA was we don't say anything about RENA reform and accuracy. And I think that's completely missing up there. And it almost needs to happen
first
for the affordable.
You're right.
That's where I would go, because they look at the audit report about RENA process. That needs to be fixed, period. And to me, increased transparency and communication is a backhanded way of saying that. I would almost replace that, because that is an item telling legislature they better be doing that. If they're not doing that, they won't get reelected.
So what
I'd
if it-
rather delete increased transparency and communication, make it about RENA, and make it about accuracy
And transparency.
and communication of RENA updates and reform, which is really our primary message of the letter. And then these are the sub-bullets, So I'm going to put the main bullet up there.
I have to agree. I like that.
I agree too.
Does anybody disagree with that? Okay, we're going to go back to where we started this whole conversation when I said put RENA number one. So there we go. Yeah, we didn't have to have all that. All right. Did anybody have any other items? I love the way that Mayor Els laid that out. So does anybody not agree with that? If so, then we'll make that our recommendation from the committee. Seeing no?
I don't have anything. I support what was just said, but I actually had a very specific request from staff in my region to come back to you on SB 79. So I wrote it down. So it said, there's one line that says staff are coordinating with California Department of Housing and Community Development and awaiting further guidance and clarification before releasing the map. We want to make sure that SANDAG also coordinates with cities before the maps are released so we can understand the boundaries used to create the buffer. So that was just a very specific request, but I wanted to put it on the record. Thanks.
We can definitely do that, and you can have your staff reach out to us. We have been, we've met with the city of San Diego. We've met with a few of the jurisdictions who have reached out. Again, we don't have a defined map yet. We are still waiting for that guidance, but we're more than willing to work with the local cities.
Thank you. Yeah, it's confusing.
And if I can maybe also solicit another call to action. So I think Kirk was saying it very nicely, but we're in a very tough position when it comes to Sacramento and housing, right? Because we know they have a very ambitious agenda when it comes to housing. We actually share that goal. We want more housing in the region, but this is where it gets real, right? That the ideas turn into, is it realistic? Can we make this actually practical? And so as we're going to Sacramento, it would really help us to have those stories about everything you are doing to support housing development in your jurisdictions, because I think the natural instinct when we go up there and say this isn't working is we don't believe you, you just don't want this bill to go through. So we will be reaching out to your city managers. If you can also flag it for them, we want to collect as many of those stories as we can to arm us as we go to Sacramento in the coming weeks to have these conversations.
I will tell you right now, we did something and we've gotten so much, I'm trying to find the polite way to say it. We've gotten less than enthusiastic support. The city increased our in lieu fee significantly. You might have seen it in the news because it was a big deal. We had not raised it in something ridiculous. It was something absurd, like 10,000 or something a unit. So it is now, I think, 180,000 a unit. So we are trying to make them, if you're going to build a 6-unit, you're going to make one of them affordable housing or it's going to cost you. And anybody who wants to build these big ones, because we have a few lots, you're going to have to put in more than one. Or somebody was moaning, one of the builders who said they couldn't afford to do it because it would cost them over time. I think it was 400,000 for a building that's going to sell for millions and millions and millions and millions. So we did it. So we don't know the effect of it. We just adopted it, so we'll know in a year or two. But the goal was to help fund these. Now that we have to buy everything and do it ourselves, we have to come up with money to do it. So when we talk about acting in good faith, I sincerely want to be in that meeting with HCD to tell me we're not acting in good faith. We are doing everything humanly possible. Like I said, might never be reelected again, but we are doing the best that we possibly can to try and help make this happen. So that's one of the things. Yeah. So any other ideas? I'd love to hear what your cities are doing. Because that's the only way we're going to learn. That we try stuff and see if it works. So.
And then our other request, if we may, is their strength in numbers, obviously. So we are partnering very closely with Cal Cities, or the League of California Cities, CSAC, which is the Association of Counties, CalCog, which is the association of all the COGs and MPOs in the region, as well as other transit agencies like LA Metro and CTD. We would love to have participating in some of these discussions, but any of those organizations that you all participate in, if you could help to elevate this through that chain of command, it would help us when Kirk's having those conversations with his counterparts in Sacramento. Because I think at the local level, we're all in lockstep, but when it gets to Sacramento, it sort of dilutes a little bit. And we want to make sure they're hearing from the San Diego region.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you all very much. I thought that was really, really productive and helpful. I think we're giving good information to the board. Is there, oh, there was a second item. What was the second one you wanted our input on? What was that second question you had for us? Success matrix. You know what? For those of you who don't know, I'm this close to finishing my PhD in public policy and political science. And one of the things I've been looking at is what has been successful. I will tell you right now, no offense to anybody on the Coastal Commission, but all of the money we've been putting aside, or they've been putting aside to build affordable short-term rentals hasn't happened. As you probably know, there's practically none built in the state. So that I would not say has been successful. So if we're trying to say what has been successful for housing, I would like someone to show me all the laws, how much is being built. The only one that did it was the ones back in 70s and 80s, and now they're all rolling off those. So I would love someone to show me what any of these laws have done. You know what would build housing? Redevelopment, when they made us put aside a percentage of that to build affordable housing. That's how it got built. So in terms of what a successful outcome for our region would be to get some measures that actually help us build something. So again, if any of you, I love the idea, the county's trying to build, but they're being stopped by environmental, but maybe somebody that's built some housing that help us figure out how you got it done in your cities, because we can't find any. My city, we've looked, how did we build it? And like I said, we built our own. That's the only way it's been built in the last 35, 40 years. So I think the successful outcome would be is if we can get something passed that actually showed it built something in our community somehow. I don't know what other successful outcomes. Can anybody think of any? What would be a matrix other than just showing something built?
I would support your suggestion of creating metrics because look, sometimes bills work and sometimes they don't. And, we were just discussing yesterday a bill to undo some of the harms of a different bill in the past. So I think having metrics is the first step to make a case, not just anecdotal reports, but also actual hard data. So anything that could support that moving forward, I'd be in support of.
Well, like I said, our city's tried two different things, and so we're going to start tracking it so we can see if it works or it helped. So if
But
anybody,
make it a requirement, right? Through legislation, require the cities that are subjected to these RENA numbers or HCD to collect data, not out of your own volition, but because it's mandated, so that then the state has to have that data, can ignore it, and then, hopefully.
I love that because we can look at the last two cycles and see, we all got these numbers. They made us all change these things. Is anything going to be built? We're all going to pay if we don't. You realize that if you don't make your numbers, they're going to give you more to do. But I don't think anything in the last go around is going to help anybody build anything they weren't already doing. So I love that. Make them track it. That's a great idea. Oh, I'm sorry. We need to open public comment for item number 5.
Thank you, Chair. We have two public commenters. We'll start with Cesar Javier and then Blair Beekman. I'm sorry, a third hand just went up. After Blair will be Marco.
I'm sorry. Our chair, Lanius, City of San Diego, is refused to learn from this board meeting. How do we define affordable housing? Based on historical backdrop, our Native Americans has no problem in sheltering. Cities are independent. They have their own king and queen. They have their own source of revenue to support programs as mandated by our Constitution. For example, hey, Mayor Gloria, I set you already the organizational tasking. I set you already the goal of that. You have to work together and ensure justice. That was a very good question, Madam Chair. Who among your cities had accomplished this successfully? No one. No one, because they do not want to be hero. The solution here is out of the box. If I am a mayor, okay, I will solve that. I'm going to build a house, a tent with clean water, clean air, clean food, clean and safe neighborhood. I can do that. Cheaper. What is the definition of this affordable housing? I think Councilor Lacaba will again declare, Mr. Javier, you crossed the line. Your face and body language are hateful. No, I am a substitute teacher, a teacher. And I learned from our history. And now we are trying to refresh that history, that we can do it. The only thing is we are not working together. And that should be the leadership in our region.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Blair Beekman, followed by Marco.
Blair Beekman, thank you for this item. A lot of dialogue. Thank you. Thank you for it. I was very appreciative of councilperson or of board member Lee's words, trying to define that there is a lot at play in how to talk about our future of affordable housing. I'm trying to learn these things. I want to simply say we should really be focusing on low-income housing most of all, but there are moderate income factors to our future of housing that are important, and Council Board Person Lee really tried to give good definitions. It was very nice of him. I would possibly add the idea that for the future of this item to also include that in what Councilperson Lee said, then to also include a focus on low-income housing as well as part of the ultimate policies, how to move forward with a special emphasis on low-income housing, words to that effect. So thank you for who brought up the point about that we do need to focus on extremely low and very low income housing. And it's a lot to work on. Good luck how we're working on it together. I also wanted to comment, Trump is coming in diplomatically to Los Angeles and saying he's taking over Los Angeles housing because of the fire things. He's got no clue on CEQA things. He wants to totally obliterate CEQA. We're just trying to put it back. There's confusion in LA. Good luck that Trump works in cooperation and not to dominate. That cooperation is so key to our future. Good luck to also the city of San Diego. They're working on 2 big housing developments in the I can't remember, Kearny Mesa area and the college area, I think. They can be good examples of Scott Wiener's housing bills that are going through that we're trying to better understand. San Diego's trying to navigate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Marco. You can go ahead.
Hello, testing.
We can hear you.
Fantastic. I just want to say congratulations to everyone in the committee. What a strong, constructive, and robust conversation today. Proud of you. And Mrs. Cooper, Mr. Williams, and Mr. Blackburn, you have your work cut out for you. So good luck. Thank you all, and have a wonderful Friday and weekend. It's going to be great weather.
Thank you. That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Before we move on to item number 6, did anybody else on the dais have anything else to add on that item? Seeing none, okay. On the last report, Robin Wapner and Antoinette will present an overview of statewide efforts to update California Senate Bill 375, the Sustainable Communities and Climate Protection Act.
So since we're on the topic of figuring out how do we actually implement great ideas in a real way, we thought we would tackle SB 375 next in Sacramento. Antoinette's going to get into the details, but SB 375 is the one that sets the GHG targets that we have to meet for each regional plan. We know how tough that is, increasingly so every plan. But we also know, again, we have a shared goal. We all want the environment to be better. We all want to reduce GHGs. And so about 1.5 years or so ago, the MPOs started having this conversation around what's going on with SB 375 and how can we make it better. It was originally passed in 2008. It's been almost 20 years. It makes sense for us to take a fresh look at this. So we started meeting with the Big Four, which is us here in San Diego, our partners in LA at SCAG, MTC in the Bay Area, and SACOG in Sacramento. And earlier last year, through a contract with SCAG, we started partnering with former Senate Pro Tem President Darrell Steinberg on engaging with stakeholders in Sacramento and throughout the state on this conversation. He was the original author of SB 375. So we've actually learned a lot about what the original intent was of the bill versus how it's playing out. And we've been having very robust discussions about where we want to go from here. So like I said, Antoinette's going to go through the details and I'll come in at the end to talk about next steps.
So the supervisor left, but she set me up nicely because she talked about the unintended consequences of bills and then having to go back and introduce a new bill to sort of fix things that we've learned aren't working very well. And that is, of course, the case with Senate Bill 375 and why Darrell Steinberg is interested and willing to partner with all of us, because he recognizes that, gosh, had I known what I know now about how this bill would be interpreted and implemented, I probably would have done things differently. So Robin, do you mind? Thank you. I'm going to just give a little bit of background information for everyone on what the SCS is and why this is important. I hope you didn't expend all your energy on housing, because this too needs your input. I know SB 375 also didn't show up on your kind of program of topics for this year, but it's definitely something we'll be talking with you about as we go through the legislative process. So a reminder, every 4 years, SANDAG has to develop a regional plan that meets the federal requirements for a long-range transportation plan, or an RTP. And the RTP guides billions of dollars in transportation investments over at least 20 years. Our plan goes out 25 years. You heard our board adopted the RTP in December of 2025. And that was a $125 billion plan for transportation and housing over the next 25 years. So it's an important plan. Projects have to be in it in order to be eligible for funding. And what happened in 2008 is Senate Bill Bill 375 introduced a new component to the RTP called the Sustainable Communities Strategy. And those sustainable community strategies have to meet a target that the ARB, the California Air Resources Board, sets by 2035. That's a 19% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from reducing vehicle miles traveled. So this bill was not about how can we electrify transportation, how can we make the transportation system cleaner. It was about how can we reduce GHG by having smart growth, land use, and multimodal transportation kind of come together. And ARB is not only responsible for updating and setting the targets, but they also determine whether or not our regional plan meets the target. So we have to get an approval from them. If we don't meet the target, if they determine that our plan isn't reasonable, then we're not eligible for state funding. So the integration of these state laws, SCS, RENA is also required to be in the regional plan, into our federally mandated RTP is a balancing act, and it's a balancing act that's getting harder and harder. We need to make sure that we can meet our federal requirements, meet the state laws, and we're really challenged there. So that's why we've partnered with other MPOs, because it's not unique to us. Everybody's challenged across the state. I always know that we talk a lot about the challenges of SB 375, but I do want to point out that there have been good things that have come out of Senate Bill 375. Regional plans are better. They're more comprehensive. They include transportation, housing, and land use, and these things all impact each other. So it's really important that we don't plan for them in isolation. Before SB 375, we had to do two separate plans, a long-range RTP for the feds, a long-range comprehensive plan for the state. One looked at land use, the environment and climate, the other transportation. This brought it together into a holistic plan. But as Robin said, a lot has changed in the last 20 years since this law was enacted, and the law hasn't really kept up with those policy changes and the on-the-ground realities. CARP's technical methodology is really outdated. It doesn't use current data, current planning assumptions, and that's making it hard for us to develop realistic plans. Our federal plans have to be what's called fiscally constrained. They have to be realistic. That means we have to show how we could pay for everything in the plans, and the SCS is really more of a visionary, kind of bold and unconstrained plan. So it's hard to marry those two together. These are some of the things that have changed that aren't taken into consideration under SB 375 currently. We talked about the hundreds of housing laws that have come out. Some of those laws they conflict with SB 375. So SB 375 says only build housing in certain places right around transit. Now, RENA says affirmatively further fair housing and build housing in high resource areas. Many of those high resource areas are high VMT areas as well. So those are the types of the conflicting things that we're seeing with some of the new laws that are coming out. The fleet transition, I mentioned we don't get credit for the transition to zero emission vehicles. Our region has made significant investments in EV infrastructure, rebate programs, and we're not getting credit for that under SB 375 currently. And then think about how much transportation has changed since 2008. There was no Lyft, there was no Uber, there were no e-bikes. All of these things have changed how people travel. And then you think about the pandemic and how that shifted travel patterns. So it's really time to take a look at SB 375, considering everything that's happened, and update it to really bring it up to today. So we are proposing sort of three big objectives, and we have different strategies under each of these objectives. The first objective is really focused on streamlining regional plan development to create more capacity and resources to focus on implementation. So right now we spend a whole lot of time going back and forth with CARB on technical methodology. It takes years. And this is because we have to use different modeling tools, different data, different technical assumptions for the RTP and the SCS. So we are proposing to make the process consistent across both, use the same modeling tools, use the same data, use the same planning assumptions, and make it an 8-year process instead of a 4-year process. Land use and transportation takes a long time to reduce VMT and GHG. We're not going to have huge changes every 4 years. We still have to do our RTP every 4 years, but that's really a minor technical update. It's not as difficult to do. So the SCS would be on an 8-year cycle. The other objective is to balance all of the different goals and the different state agencies' priorities. Reducing GHG is important, but so is affordability, so is increasing mobility, so is expanding housing, so is making the transportation system safer. And we really believe that the state needs to consider all of the things that we have to do in our regional plan and balance those goals when they're setting the target and when they're reviewing our plans. And then the third is really about creating more resources for implementation, and having a better partnership with the state. So we believe that the California Transportation Commission needs to have a bigger role in the sustainable community strategy because they develop the regional transportation plan guidelines for the state, and their involvement in the SCS would mean there's better alignment between the SCS and the RTP. They also control the funding, and so they understand transportation funding, and they can make sure that that funding is being directed towards those projects that are in our regional plans and our SCSs. And we also want to create a RENA type program, right? So we want to kind of look at some of the existing programs that are out there, some of the competitive programs, and maybe restructure them to be more like RENA and have more money flow through the regions to locals to develop housing.
REAP, not RENA. We don't want to replicate
Sorry,
RENA.
no, it's REAP. RENA.
Thank you.
She
Thank
was
you.
testing you to see if you're.
I almost had a heart attack.
I got Rena on the mind. But, you know, the 50 million that we got in REAP has resulted in more than 1,000 units being constructed in the region. It's a really good example of what we could do if we had an ongoing funding source like that. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Robin. She'll just remind everybody what the legislative process is, kind of where we're at and where we're going with SB 375. And then we'll open it up for your feedback.
Yes, so similar to housing, this is going to be a tough one to get through the legislative cycle, but I think given all the conversations we've been having with stakeholders, we're optimistic that we will be able to make some progress. We have been able to identify an author for the bill. So we're currently working with their office on some legislative language. We're planning to start engaging our local regional stakeholders over the coming weeks to make sure they all have a voice in what this ultimately looks like. But again, the key takeaway that we want everyone to hear is our focus is on delivery. We know that the regional plan is a planning document, but ultimately what we want it to facilitate is delivery of projects that reduce GHGs. And right now we're spending way too much time on the modeling, the back and forth. I mean, once you're starting to have an argument over who gets credit over what, you're having the wrong conversation. So we want to reframe the conversation, get back to delivering on the projects that we've committed to our region's residents and actually improve the environment along the way.
And to Robin's point, the amount of time that we're spending on this is costing big MPOs like SANDAG like $30 million now to develop a regional plan. And you think about what we could do with $30 million in terms of implementing projects that achieve the goals of the SCS.
Yep. So Kirk went over the legislative deadlines earlier, but February 20th is the big one. That's when we will be introducing a bill. It may be sort of a spot bill, intent bill. There might not be a lot of substance at that point, but that's when it will first go live, and then it'll start to move through the committee process. We do fully expect it to continue to evolve as it does that, but we have already started engaging with the state agencies as well. So we're hopeful that they will collaborate with us, and ultimately the governor will sign something into law by the end of this year that will help us as we start to work on the next regional plan, which will be starting very soon.
Which we will be starting in about 6 months. Yes.
Before we do comments from members, did anybody have any questions? Nope. Are any public comments on this item?
Yes, thank you. We do have two public comments, Cesar Javier and Blair Beekman.
Cesar and Purita, this is our favorite subject. We envision that a community survive with elements like clean air, clean water, clean food, no less drugs, possibly, no marijuana, no and familiar what, and clean and safe community. Those are our dreams, because with these elements we can survive centenarian life. Can we do that? Leadership of our show window city of San Diego, they failed us, and that we would like as an input for other cities' leadership to as a lesson. What else do you would like to input? Oh, thank you, SANDAG, because you're leading the way. So our member association would know the meaning of the strength of a chain is the weakness of the weakest link. What does it mean? Basic. By the way, we didn't say thank you to the SANDAG researcher and thinkers.
Thank you.
We appreciate it, and the more we see the weakest link in our association of governance. Mom, City of Colorado, we saw you in the council meeting. But now we only not see the way you speak, but the way your body language express cravings for solution. Your question, if you have question, do you have solution? That's the way it should be. Correct? Or we may cross the line as Councilor Lacaba has bestowed upon us, who are just trying to voice our pain and suffering.
Thank you very much. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Blair Beekman. You can go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman. Thank you for this item. Good to hear. Yeah, I think what I was talking about previously, what the city of San Diego is working on, they have two big updates to their housing planning for the Kearny Mesa and College area. That they're talking about density a lot, and they're not mentioning it yet, but the Scott Wiener bill from the state level that SANDAG was really adamantly upset about. It has a large factor in these environmental considerations, I think, that I hope we can learn to incorporate into our conversation. It's my hope and feeling that San Diego is working on, for the Kearny Mesa and College area, two different plans and two different ways that can work with and around, to be honest, the Scott Wiener things. So they'll have two separate options of how to be developing the future of housing and density that environmental, issues will play a really important part in. And of course, part of the problems with the Scott Wiener bill is that it rewards basically middle income housing. I mean, that's no prize. I don't think that's such a great prize. So we obviously still have to be considering middle income housing as affordable housing concerns. I think offering language in how you talk about the future of such items of affordable housing that have a real specific goal of working towards very low and extremely low housing also, that sets a tone and a standard what we're really trying to work towards and help with. And that needs the most help from ourselves. If we address those issues, then we're really addressing our society. And we have to be doing that more. We don't want to do that. Good luck how we can. And that's what building the future of RENA things is about, that I think was talked about, that you are building. Updates on how you're redeveloping RENA right now is really needed. Make that a regular public process, please. Thank you.
That concludes the public comments.
Does anybody on the dais have any comments or input onto this item?
Yeah, I want to go back to the premise. I think Antoinette put in there, and I talk about this a lot. It's basically that we don't get to count electrification of vehicles, and so ultimately, I ask: is 375 about minimizing greenhouse gases or about minimizing vehicle miles? And it appears to be, in fact, about vehicle miles, even though the intent is written as greenhouse gases. And so my ask, and I think our ask should be, let's get 375 back to greenhouse gases, which is its motivation, and let us get credit for the electric vehicle. I play this game when I'm driving around town. I count how many cars before the next electric vehicle. Yeah. Man, in the last couple of years, it's 1 in 10 easily, and probably 1 in 5. At least certainly in North County where I'm driving a lot, and that's what we want to do. And so I think I want to get it aligned. I want to get the alignment of the law to what it purports to be. Thank you.
Yes, and we are requesting a pure GHG target, not a GHG target that is based on vehicle miles traveled.
Thank you. That's very important for us as well. One interesting fact that I learned from my best friend lives in Florida. She's a executive for an insurance company, and they get an annual report. One was the top 50 solar cities in the United States, and Santee was number 2, right? And who would think, right? Yeah. But there's a reason behind that, and we have a lot of homes with rooftops, so we can support it. We're in Santee, sunny Santee, all the time, no coastal fog. And we, decades ago, we just started requiring all new housing with garages to be built plug-in ready for an electric vehicle. So there's a lot of electric vehicles in CNT, and we get no credit for it. And I imagine that's probably true. Like the top 20 of the 50 were in the state of California. So probably we need to start looking at that data to start to get credit for this in our region.
I will tell you, as chair, when I was chair of Energy Working Group years ago, I asked every month to have the report on the number of electric vehicles in our county. When you try and track it yourself, it's actually hard. I've tried to do that. You go back, it's a little complicated how you do that, but I know the data is there because I started doing it. I used to make staff here help me come up with that. So I agree with everybody that I think the question is, how many electric vehicles are on the road now versus when this all started, which, as we all know, significantly more. So it also helps for two reasons. There is some data collected because every time we talk about building more level 2 chargers and else, we talk about the number of vehicles. So I think whatever we do on SB 375 needs to include not just switching to greenhouse gas reduction from VMT, but also forcing the utilities, which actually have data because they're the ones that have to agree to put in your charger at your house, to release that data to the MPOs and everybody, because that's part of it. It's always been a data collection issue. And in San Diego, for those of you that don't know, SDG&E isn't the one tracking the rebates, which is how you get it. It's actually in San Diego, unlike in SCE and PG&E, the utilities track it. So here it's not. So it's a little harder to get because SDG&E has to approve the charging in your house, but it's a different entity that gives our rebates. So more info than you needed, but let's put that in there to make sure we, as the MPO, have that data so we can use that effectively to argue for whatever we're going to argue for in 375. Any other comments on this item? Thank you all very, very much. What a productive meeting. Before we conclude the meeting, I want to thank our representative from Caltrans. I am so happy you are here. Thank you, Jose. And thank you all. It was a great, robust discussion. And I will see you again in 2 months. The next meeting is going to be on March 12th at 9 a.m. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.
And a reminder, our next meeting is on a Thursday.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Thursday, March 12th.
At 9 a.m.
At 9 a.m.